Good morning, everybody. It's me, Albatross. I want to thank the person who pointed this out in the comments. I'm scared to call it. I'm afraid to shout anybody out anymore, being as the things that have happened to me the last few days. So you know who you are. Thanks for pointing this out to me. I appreciate it because this speech may have been delivered in or written in 1712, but the reason I pulled it up to read to you all is because I think you'll see as I start reading, uh, like a lot of this is, you can see it today in like all of society, um in the USA, and maybe even outside of the USA. To those of you who come and watch these videos who don't live in the United States of America, I mean, this is relevant to you too. So, I want to read it. Trigger warning. It's it's very disturbing. Very, very disturbing. But here we go. This speech was delivered by Willie Lynch on the bank of the James River in the colony of Virginia in 1712. Lynch was a British slave owner in the West Indies. He was invited to the colony of Virginia in 1712 to teach his methods to slave owners there. The term lynching is derived from his last name, if that tells you anything about the man. Okay. Gentlemen, I greet you here on the bank of the James River in the year of our Lord, 1712. First, I shall thank you, the gentlemen of the colony of Virginia, for bringing me here. I am here to help you solve some of your problems with slaves. Your invitation reached me on my modest plantation in the West Indies, where I have experimented with some of the newest and still the oldest methods for control of slaves. Ancient Rome would envy us if my program is implemented. As our boat sailed south on the James River, named for our illustrious king, whose version of the Bible we cherish, not translation, I saw enough to know that your problem is not unique. While Rome used cords of wood as crosses for standing human bodies along its highways in great numbers, you are here using the tree and the rope on occasions. I smelt someone hanging from a tree. I don't like the way this guy talks, so I'm going to try not to word it the way he does. It's absolutely disgusting. A couple miles back. You are not only losing valuable stock by hangings, you are having uprisings. Slaves are running away. Your crops are sometimes left in the fields too long for maximum profit. You suffer occasional fires. Your animals are killed. Yet God forbid you guys go out and work. Gentlemen, you know what your problems are. I do not need to elaborate. I am not here to enumerate your problems. I am here to introduce you to a method of solving them. In my bag here, I have a foolproof method for controlling your slaves. Now, remember the time he's talking about when slavery was still legal. But the way I'm talking about this is, you'll see what I mean. I'll talk more about it at the end. Just let me continue. I guarantee every one of you that if installed correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseer can use it. I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves, and I take these differences and make them bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. Let me repeat that. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. Gee, doesn't that strategy sound familiar? I mean, I'm just thinking about every major news outlet. Okay, anyways, these methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. Take this simple little list of differences and think about them. On top of my list is age. But it's there only because it starts with an A. Okay. The second is color or shade. There is intelligence, size, sex, size of plantations, status on plantations, attitude of owners, whether the slaves live in the valley, on a hill, east. You see, this is why I use highlighter so I can see better. I'm sorry. East, west, north, south, have fine hair, coarse hair, or is tall or short. So basically he's saying he's using every little difference every single person has to create division. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of action. But before that, I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than trust. True. I mean, envy, stronger than adulation. True. Respect or admiration. The slaves, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry on and will become self-refueling and self-generating for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Don't forget, you must pitch the old versus the young, the dark skin versus the light skin. You must use female versus male and male versus female. You must also have white servants and overseers. Distrust all the black slaves. Or no, I'm sorry, just all blacks in general. Okay. It is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love and respect and trust only us. Also sound familiar? Now, listen, I'm talking about everybody. I'm not talking about any, I'm talking about everybody. Who is it that it seems like everybody trusts no matter what? Our fucking government for some reason? Okay. These kits are your keys to control them. Oh, and if you disagree with me, then why do we send our kids to their schools and stuff and let them take kids? So, just putting that out there before anybody tries to argue with me about that. Okay. These kits are your keys to control. Use them. Have your wives and children use them. Never miss an opportunity. If used intensely for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful. Thank you, gentlemen. And then this is the literature he provides. Okay, part 1. Let's make a slave. It was the interest and business of slaveholders. Let me zoom in a little bit so I can read a little better. Sorry. Okay, there we go. Of slaveholders to study human nature, and the slave nature in particular, with a view to practical results. I and many of them attained astonishing proficiency in this direction. They had to deal not with earth, wood, and stone, but with men, and by every regard they had for their own safety and prosperity. They needed to know the material on which they were to work. Conscious of the injustice and wrong, they were every hour perpetuating and knowing what they themselves would do. Were they the victims of such wrongs? They were constantly looking for the first signs of the dreaded retribution. They watched, therefore with skilled and practiced eyes, and learned to read with great accuracy the state of mind and heart of the slave. I'm going to skip that racist part. Unusual sobriety, apparent abstractions, sullenness, and indifference indeed. Any mood out of the common was afforded ground for suspicion and inquiry. Frederick Douglass, Let's Make a Slave, is a study of the scientific process of man breaking and slave making. And no, I don't think he means the Frederick Douglass that lived in the 1800s. Remember, this is the 1700s. Okay. It describes the rationale and results of the Anglo-Saxons' ideas and methods of ensuring the master-slave relationship. Let's make a slave. The original and development of a social being. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, guys. This is so awful, this whole literature. But listen. Just listen to, like, what they're saying. Okay? And, just think about how we all live our lives. That's all I'm saying. Okay, where was I? Okay, here we go. What do we need? First of all, we need man, a pregnant woman, and her baby boy. Second, we will use the same basic principle that we use in breaking a horse, combined with some more sustaining factors. What we do with horses is that we break them from one form of life to another. That is, we reduce them from their natural state in nature. Whereas nature provides them with the natural capacity to care for their offspring. We break that natural strain of independence from them and thereby create a dependency status so that we may be able to get from them useful production for our business and pleasure. All right. Words break the will to resist. The breaking process is the same for both the horse and the slave, only slightly varying degrees. But as we said before, there is an art to long-range economic planning. You must keep your eye and thoughts on the female and the offspring. Let me repeat that. You must keep your eye and thoughts on the female and the offspring of the horse and the slave. A brief discourse in offspring development will shed light on the key to sound economic principles. Pay little attention to the generation of original breaking, but concentrate on future generation. Therefore, if you break the female mother, she will break the offspring in its early years of development. And when the offspring is old enough to work, she will deliver it up to you, for her normal female protective tendencies will have been lost in the original breaking process. For example, take the case of a wild stud horse, a female horse, and an already infant horse, and compare the breaking process with two captured slaves in their natural state, two male slaves in their natural state, a pregnant woman slave, and her infant offspring. Take the stud horse, break him for limited containment, completely break the female horse until she becomes very gentle, whereas you or anybody can ride her in comfort. Breed the mare and stud until you have the desired offspring. Then you can turn the stud to freedom until you need him again. Train the female horse, whereby she will eat out of your hand. And she will in turn train the infant horse to eat out of your hand also. When it comes to breaking a person, use the same process, but vary the degree and step up the pressure so as to do a complete reversal of the mind. Take the meanest and most restless slave, strip him of this gets graphic. Strip him of his clothes in front of the remaining male slave, the female, and the infant. Tar feather him. Tie each leg to a different horse faced in opposite directions. You get the drift. Set him on fire and let the horses go. You get the drift. You get the drift. The next step is to take a bullwhip and beat the remaining male slave to the point of death in front of the female and the infant. Don't kill him, but put the fear of God in him, for he can be useful for future breeding. Now, the breaking process for females. Take the female, run a series of tests on her to see if she will submit to your desires willingly. Test her in every way because she is the most important factor for good economics. If she shows any sign of resistance in submitting completely to your will, do not hesitate to use the bullwhip on her to extract that last bit of bitch out of her. Take care not to kill her, for in doing so, you spoil good economics. When in complete submission, she will train her offsprings in the early years to submit to labor when they become of age. Understanding is the best thing. Therefore, we shall go deeper into this area of the subject matter concerning what we have produced here in this breaking process of the female. We have reversed the relationship in her natural state. Don't you mean the opposite from her natural civilized state to anyway? She would have a strong dependency on the civilized male, and she would have a limited protective tendency toward her independent male offspring and would raise male offsprings to be dependent like her. Nature had provided for this type of balance. We reverse nature by burning and pulling a civilized male apart and bullwhipping the other to the point of death, all in her presence. By her being left alone, unprotected, with the male image destroyed, the ordeal caused her to move from her psychological dependent state to a frozen independent state. Can I repeat that for anyone who might have missed that little point? By her being left alone, unprotected, with the male image destroyed, the ordeal caused her to move from her psychological dependent state to a frozen independent state. In this frozen psychological state of independence, she will raise her male and female offspring in reversed roles. Now, is it just me? Or does that not sound like every single broken family? Or a lot of them at least. For fear of the young male's life, she will psychologically train him to be mentally weak and dependent, but physically strong. Because she has become psychologically independent, she will train her female offsprings to be psychologically independent. What have you got? You've got the woman out front and the man behind and scared. This is a perfect situation of sound sleep and economics. Before the breaking process, we had to be alertly on guard at all times. Now we can sleep soundly, for out of frozen fear, his woman stands guard for us, and he cannot get past her early slave molding. He is a good tool, now ready to be tied to the horse at a tender age. By the time a slave boy reaches the age of 16, he is soundly broken in and ready for a long life of sound and efficient work and the reproduction of a unit of good labor force. Continually through the breaking of civilized people, by throwing the female into a frozen psychological state of independence, by killing of the protective male image, and by creating a submissive dependent mind of the male slave. We have created an orbiting cycle that turns on its own axis forever, unless a phenomenon occurs and reshifts the position of the male and female. We show what we mean by example. Take the case of two economic slave units and examine them close. And then this next part, the marriage unit. Okay. We breed two males with two females. Then we take the male away from them, keep them moving and working. Say one female bears another female, and the other bears a male. Both females being without the influence of a male image, frozen within an independent psychology, will raise their offspring into reverse positions. The one with the female offspring will teach her to be like herself, independent and negotiable. We negotiate with her, through her, by her, negotiates at her will. The one with the male offspring, she being frozen subconscious fear for his life, will raise him to be mentally dependent and weak, but physically strong. In other words, body over mind. Now, in a few years, when these two offsprings become fertile for early reproduction, we will mate and breed them and continue the cycle. That is good, sound, and long-range comprehensive planning. Earlier, we talked about the non-economic good of the horse and the slave in their wild or natural state. We talked out the principle of breaking and tying them together for orderly production. Furthermore, we talked about paying particular attention to the female and her offspring for orderly future planning. Then more recently, we stated that by reversing the positions of male and female, we created an orbiting cycle that turns on its own axis forever, unless a phenomenon occurred in reshift in positions of the male and female. Our experts warned us about the possibility of this phenomenon occurring, for they say that the mind has a strong drive to correct and recorrect itself over a period of time. If I can touch some substantial original historical base, they advised us that the best way to deal with the phenomenon is to shave off the male's mental history, create a multiplicity of phenomena of illusions, so that each illusion will twirl in its own orbit, something similar to floating balls in a vacuum. This creation of multiplicity of phenomena of illusions entails the principle of crossbreeding the slave and the horse, as we stated above, the purpose of which is to create a diversified division of labor, thereby creating different levels of labor and different values of illusion at each connecting level of labor, the result of which is the severance of the points of original beginnings for each sphere of illusion. Since we feel that the subject matter may get more complicated as we proceed in laying down our economic plan concerning the purpose, reason, and effect for crossbreeding horses and slaves, we shall lay down the following definition terms for future generations. Orbiting cycle means a thing turning in a given path. Axis, oh my gosh, giving everyone a lesson, upon which or around a body turns. Phenomena means something beyond ordinary conception and inspires awe and wonder. Multiplicity means a great number, means a globe. Crossbreeding a horse means taking a horse and breeding it with an ass. And you get a dumb, backward ass, long-headed mule that is not reproductive nor productive by itself. Crossbreeding people, yeah, you get the idea. I'm not going to read that racist shit. I'm not going to read that. You got a multiplicity of colors of tide. Okay, yeah. Neither productive for itself, and none of that's logical anyway. I'm not going to read none of that bullshit. Okay. This is really the, this is kind of important too. So, listen up. Crossbreeding completed. For further severance from their original beginning, we must completely annihilate the mother tongue of both new slaves and the new mule and institute a new language that involves the new life's work of both. You know, language is a peculiar institution. It leads to the heart of a people. The more a foreigner knows about the language of another country, the more he is able to move through all levels of that society. Therefore, if the foreigner is an enemy of the country, to the extent that he knows the body of the language, to that extent the country is vulnerable to attack or invasion of a foreign culture. For example, if you take a slave and teach him all about your language, he will know all your secrets, and he is then no more a slave, for you can't fool him any longer. And being a fool is one of the basic ingredients of incidents to the maintenance of the slavery system. Hear that? Being a fool is one of the basic ingredients. For example, if you told a slave that he must perform in getting out our crops, and he knows the language well, he would know that our crops didn't mean our crops. And the slavery system would break down, for he would relate on the basis of what our crops really meant. So you have to be careful in setting up the new language for slaves. Would soon be in your house, talking to you man to man, and that is death to our economic system. In addition, doesn't that sound like similar to the way our government treats us? Okay, in addition, the definitions of words or terms are only a minute part of the process. Values are created and transported by communication through a body of language. A total society has many interconnected value systems. All the values in the society have bridges of language to connect them for orderly working in the society. But for these language bridges, these many value systems would sharply clash and cause internal strife or civil war. The degree of the conflict being determined by the magnitude of the issues or relative opposing strength in whatever form. For example, if you put a slave in a hog pen, train him to live there, and incorporate in him to value it as a way of life completely, the biggest problem you would have out of him is that he would worry you about provisions to keep the hog pen clean. Or the same hog pen, make a slip and incorporate something in his language whereby he comes to value a house more than he does his hog pen. You got a problem, and he will soon be in your house. I think that was all of it. Yeah, that was all of it. But just take the way our society is, like, and this applies no matter what color you are. Think about how the family unit has been broken down so much. Think about how the government has made it so it's almost easier for a woman by herself to make it than it is, with her husband. You know what I mean? Like, just think about the way it's set up. It's set up for all of society, at least the poor ones of us. It's set up this way on purpose. By our own government. They knew these methods. They're still using them. They're using them for all of society so the government can control us all. Do you guys not get that? Think about the changes that happened when MK Ultra first started. Think about everything that changed. The federal government all of a sudden wanted to fund CPS. All of a sudden wanted to fund the education system. And what does that mean? When they fund something, that means they got a say. That means they got a say in it all. Just think about look it up. CPS in the education system, low-income education in particular, all started getting funded by the federal government in the early 60s. Right at the peak of MK Ultra. They've been molding generation after generation since then. Just look at all the divorce rates, all the statistics. Just look at them over time. Ignore the brainwash program. and just really look into it and you will see. But anyways, I gotta go. Thanks.